This program was supported in part by South Carolina Humanities.
When the plane landed, the tears just kept coming, and I couldn't get up to stop. You know, you hear about a place, you dream about a place, you have all kind of imaginations, but when you get there and you finally realize that you're where your family started from, that's it empowers you in such a way that I can't even begin to express it.
The Gullah, also known as the Gullah Geechee, are descendants of people from Sierra Leone and other neighboring countries of the West African rice coast. They were kidnapped, enslaved, and taken to the coastal low country of South Carolina and North Carolina, Florida, and Georgia. Over the centuries, the Gullah Geechee have retained a deep connection to Africa and a culture shaped by the dynamic currents of the Atlantic world.
May I have attention, the gatehouse passenger ship.
In December 2019, a group of Gullah Geechee cultural ambassadors boarded a plane for Sierra Leone. They included performers, scholars, teachers, artists, students, and business people. They were taking part in the latest of a remarkable series of homecomings that have nurtured an evolving relationship between Sierra Leone and the Gullah Geechee. There have been 3 previous Gullah Geechee homecomings to Sierra Leone, all organized in part by historian Joseph Opala, whose research helped to establish the historic link between the two cultures.
In 1988, President Joseph Momo of Sierra Leone visited Penn Center on St. Helena Island, South Carolina. And President Momo invited Emory Campbell, then the director of Penn Center, to organize a homecoming of Gullah people to Sierra Leone. That took place the next year in 1989. The next one took place in 1997. It's called the Moran Family Homecoming.
So they moved around.
And that involved a family of Gullah or Geechee people from coastal Georgia who had preserved a song in the Mende language of Sierra Leone. The last homecoming that I worked on was called Priscilla's Homecoming. We had found Tomlin Polite in Charleston, South Carolina. She was the great, 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 great granddaughter of a little girl brought on a slave ship from Sierra Leone in the year 1756. That was also just a national event that just caught everybody's imagination.
The 2019 homecoming was different from the earlier ones.
This recent homecoming was led by Amadou Massaly, a Sierra Leonean. I worked on homecomings that were patronized by the government of Sierra Leone. The U.S. Embassy backed them. These were state visits. What Amadou has done, though, is to organize a homecoming by Sierra Leoneans and Gullahs themselves.
When I go southwest, east and north, I will always come back home.
What's happening now is that Sierra Leoneans and Gullahs have already picked up on the family relationship, and they're going with it. And that's really something that's great to see.
This trip has been in the works for some years now. I've been building relationships since 2006 among many of these Gullah leaders that you see with us. And it's happening now, to my surprise and astonishment, because of the number of people that we have out here and also the quality of Gullah leaders that agreed to come on our tour.
That first night there, we got to the hotel and they came and the dancers and we met the chief. The spirit of the people there is so great, so welcoming, inviting. The reception of us, it was so awesome. And they really made you feel like you are sister and auntie and cousin. And right there, it started. Man, it started coming up through the ground and through my feet, resonated through all of me, and it just grew and grew and grew throughout the trip.
Our forefathers want to communicate to you that we leave these people in your hands. All the protection, you prevent them from accidents. They wish them all the good things. We are taking this alcohol. So that's why we are doing this one tonight, so that you can get a taste of it.
These guys are our relatives. Okay. If you don't know about them, we'll be here for about 10 days. Before we leave Sierra Leone, you will know a whole lot about these Gullah Geechees. We appreciate it.
More and more people are gravitating towards roots tourism, towards heritage tourism, and they will want to see the real deal. That is what I think Sierra Leone has an advantage, because like no other country, we can show our links with African Americans are real.
Bunce Island, about 20 miles from Freetown, was the largest British slave fortress on the Rice Coast. From 1670 until the English slave trade was abolished in 1807, it was the last glimpse of home for tens of thousands of enslaved Africans. Today, only ruins remain at Bunce Island, a testament to the horrors of the slave trade.
He woke me early this morning, yeah.
I didn't know what I expected. I didn't know if I would have this strong emotional experience. So folk were down there singing and doing stuff, and I was gone. I was up in the castle by myself. I was mostly aware of the trees and how the roots had been tearing this building down, and how this is what it looks like so many years after this castle was decommissioned, and what's it going to look like in another 100 years, and another 100 years. I was very aware of the earth reclaiming it, and this kind of idea that there's this cycle of pain or suffering and oppression and all of that. I didn't feel it as overwhelming pain. I felt it as part of this evolution of Gullah Geechee, of African American, of the diaspora.
Time ticks and the ruins fade away, but haunting memories forever stay.
Wonderful.
I definitely heard a lot about Bunce Island from my dad. This is his second time going to Sierra Leone, so he created a whole CD and book, and I was already sort of anticipating some of the pain that he interpreted in those creative projects. I made a point to sort of move around Bunce Island separately. At one point, I just was sitting by myself in what we were told was the pen where the enslaved women and children were. Being in that space made me think this might be a root of people feeling like they don't matter.
When we went to Bunce Island, you could still feel the energy. And so did my grandson, who was with me at that point.
I'll tell you one more.
Anybody who has that strong of an energy and a spirit that still stays in a location for over 200 years tells you something about the people themselves.
I'm a photographer, and I'm out here taking as many pictures as I can just to document the history, because a lot of people back home don't know about this place because they don't teach this. I didn't know about it until this trip, where my grandma, she told me on the way here about Bunce Island and the importance of it. I'm 23 years old and I never heard of it. So it's people back home that I feel need to know about this place. So that's why I'm here documenting as much as I can.
Bunce Island, going there in particular, that's where I made the connection, and that's where the full circle happened for me. It was there that I understood. That's where we came from.
going from place to place, north, south, east, and west of Sierra Leone, going into more rural areas, farming areas, you get glimpses of rice fields.
Rice is a staple food in Sierra Leone. Most Sierra Leoneans eat it at least twice a day. For them, as well as for the Gullah Geechee, rice is both a favorite dish and a part of their history.
Colonists saw that these things matched and that they could grow rice here, but they didn't know how to. And we were the experts at it. The Gullah Geechee people, before we were Gullah Geechee.
Africans from the Rice Coast had developed a system for cultivating rice using dikes that controlled the flow of water in and out of the fields. It worked perfectly for the southern lowcountry. In the 18th and 19th centuries, rice created more wealth in South Carolina and Georgia than any other crop. By 1860, the South Carolina rice plantations were producing more than 14 million pounds of rice a year.
Then we come upon this one area where the rice field is almost where we can just touch it. And we on the van just like, we gotta stop. Can we go to the rice field? Everyone is just like, we're gonna stop. They were harvesting. They had their machetes and beautiful men. And I was like, wow, these are my people. They gave us some bouquets of rice. All Gullah Geechee people, South Carolina, Georgia, we all love rice. And there's nothing more beautiful than coming upon this original Sierra Leonean rice. All I could think about was, this is why we were brought over. Carolina gold rice is what it was known for at that time, and it made people immensely wealthy off of our expertise, knowledge, and slave labor.
When you talk about South Carolina being one of the wealthiest colonies, one of the wealthiest British colonies in the world, well, why was that? It was because they relied tremendously on the technical and managerial skills of a group of enslaved Africans who knew how to grow what became the most popular commercial export, which is rice.
Kabbalah is in the mountainous north of Sierra Leone. As in the rest of the country, residents speak their regional tongue as well as a Creole language called Creole. It is similar in many ways to Gullah, which is spoken by the Gullah Geechee. Creole and Gullah are both Creole languages with roots in English and African tongues. They originated with the enslavement and trade of West Africans, allowing people to communicate across many different cultures. Gullah is the only distinctly English and African Creole language in the United States. Over time, speaking Gullah became something to be ashamed of.
It was the effort to get out of the Gullah Geechee culture, assimilate. Go someplace, people used to tell us, go someplace and find some culture.
In more recent years, speaking Gullah has become a source of pride.
As a child, I was told not to speak Gullah. That was one of the things, you have to speak perfect English. And that's why sometimes they joke with me now that I'm in the group that I speak proper. And they laugh at me.
When we were in Kabbalah, there was a lady that I was dancing with, and some other ladies came around me, and they started talking to me in their native tongue. I had no idea what they were saying to me. So I looked over at Dr. Eric Crawford from Coastal, and I said, come here, Eric, come here. So he came over, and one of the ladies looked at him, and she said, Gladi Fasiona, take for come see. And I was like, but you didn't say it to me. I understood exactly what she said. So when we listen to Gullah and then we go over to Creole, this is that common denominator so that no matter where we are, we're still connected, we're still family, and we can still communicate.
The university students who assisted us I would listen to them, and I wanted to know what it was that they were speaking. Many of them Creole, but they would speed through it. I had been speaking with one of the tour coordinators about this, and he said, ask them to speak Kringlish, not Creole, Kringlish. And when I did that, they slowed it down, and I could more readily understand what they were saying. In Gullah, we said this. Yes. In Creole, they said this for this. In Gullah, we said that. That. In Creole, they said that for that. In Gullah, we said honor. Honor. In Creole, they say una for you. In Gullah, we say woman. In Creole, they say woman for woman. Yeah, we talk the same way, small, 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 small. Yeah, we talk the same way, just a little bit.
Kabbalah is at the base of a steep hill leading to the ruins of a centuries-old fortified town, Old Yagala.
There's a mesa where Africans moved their village up to defend themselves against slave invaders who were also other Africans. So whilst up there, they could see for miles away as we went up there and saw for ourselves that, yeah, this place was really a special place.
There was a hard climb up the hill, but I was determined to make it. It's a grind, brother. It's a grind, but we're going to get it. Yeah, we're going to get it. What gets me more than anything is the tenacity and the ingenuity of the people to come up here to get out of the way of the enemy. And now today is very surreal because to me, it tells me that they had a desire to be free. There's nothing like freedom. And what I see here today is freedom in display.
It's important for us to tell the resistance story because you don't hear much about it. And I think it brings some African pride to black people to learn that even in Africa, we resisted the slave trade.
Rogbonko is a small village, the only place in Sierra Leone where women still sew coiled baskets. Its residents welcome visitors with music and dancing in the street.
That was very different than the welcoming ceremonies to other villages. Everyone was part of this processional, which I learned. That was the boo-boo dance. You dance and you move forward. Then you stop and you dance. And then dance some more and move forward. It goes on. You advance to the site where there is to be a ceremony.
On this day, the special event involved Nakia Wigfall, a Gullah basket maker from Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, the 7th generation of her family to sew coiled baskets from native sweetgrass.
We all came into the village and they were plain instruments which they made from the materials in the neighborhood like bamboo, and they were dancing and of course put me out front, making me feel like a queen, very special. When I went to Sierra Leone, I had a mission. I wanted to sit and make baskets with a basket maker. I brought in some starters. Because of time, I wanted the basket makers there to actually work on my starters. Sitting there with those basket makers brought back memories to when me and my cousins and my sisters, we would always just sit around making baskets, telling jokes, having fun, talking, having a good time. I felt that when I was there, because you had generations, you have a grandmother, you have the mother, children. It was special. It was special to me. As you can see, this was the bottom, and they started working on it. Now, this grass is actually the grass from Sierra Leone. It looks identical to the sweet grass that I have here. This particular basket, basically almost the same as that, a basket maker in Sierra Leone. Started off with the bottom of it, and I started sewing on it with my own materials from here. And when I get through with this basket, it will be a rice fanner, as we would call it.
Sweetgrass basket making is closely tied to the history of the South Carolina Rice Kingdom. The ancestors of Gullah Geechee people used coiled baskets for hauling and processing rice and brought that tradition with them to America. In particular, the flat, wide fanner basket used for separating the kernel from the chaff was vital to the rice economy.
Going back to West Africa and sitting with the basket makers in the village and connecting it to home in the whole Gullah Geechee tradition, to me it's like we're the same people. They're just generations of basket makers on the other side, whereas we're generations of basket makers on this side, and we'll be sewn together forever. In some way, I always knew that there was something missing, and now that I went to Sierra Leone, as well as Senegal, I feel that I found what was missing.
Taking a trip or a pilgrimage over to Sierra Leone as a Gullah Geechee person really helps you to see and feel the connection that has been told that we have. Seeing how in a village setting that it really does take that village to raise the child. And that's always been the case here in our communities, in our Gullah communities here, that it takes the entire village.
Alain Locke, major philosopher of the Harlem Renaissance, said nothing is more galvanizing than the sense of a cultural past. So, for the Gullah Geechee people to understand that they have a very specific cultural past, and that this very specific cultural past comes from a very specific place in West Africa, I mean, that's strong.
The village of Leonean-Gullah has special meaning for the Gullah Geechee. This is where scholars located a song that linked a family from Georgia directly to Sierra Leone. The data that informed their discovery was collected by linguist Lorenzo Dow Turner. In 1931, Turner visited the Georgia Sea Islands to record people speaking and singing in Gullah. He recognized one song, sung by a Gullah Geechee woman named Amelia Dawley, as being in Mende, an African language spoken primarily in Sierra Leone. Decades later, Joseph Opala and two colleagues set out to find the song in Sierra Leone.
I formed a team with the Sierra Leonean linguist, Tazif Karoma, and with Cynthia Schmidt, who's an American ethnomusicologist. We actually decided over our Christmas break to just go from village to village in that area, playing the song. We got to this one village, and a young woman began to sing along in her language from the very first moments of that recording. We then went to look for it in the United States. Turner had recorded it from a woman, Amelia Dawley. We wondered if she had children or grandchildren who might still remember the song. And it turned out that her daughter, Mary Moran, could still sing that song all these years later.
In 1997, Mary Moran and her family went to Sierra Leone, where Mary met Bindu Jabati, the woman who knew the Mende song. Centuries ago, an African woman carried a song with her across the ocean. Now her song has helped her descendants to trace their roots. The Moran family homecoming was documented in the film The Language You Cry In, which is broadcast in Sierra Leone every year on Independence Day. More than 20 years after Mary Moran visited Leonean-Gullah, members of her family returned for an emotional reunion. The third time they have come back to the village, where they've helped to establish a school and a health center. Also returning was Cynthia Schmidt, and Bindu Jabati was an honored guest. Wilson Moran, Mary's son, was carried to the stage in a hammock.
I don't know about you. I personally thank her from the bottom of my heart for remembering the Tinjumi and the Awakasa. Now I will introduce Winston Ralphett
On behalf of my family from the coast of Georgia in the United States, we bring greetings of love, peace, support, and we want to thank you so much for your hospitality. We look forward to working with you for many more years. And thank you for making us feel so welcome.
It feels like home. It really does. It's my cousin. It's my auntie. I can give you money. You take care, auntie. Then do Japati. Then do Japati. This is an experience that I will never forget. I will never forget it, and I will never forget the people of this village, especially this village. This is where I'm from. I am home now.
And in the interest of time, I want to pass the mic on to you so we can...
That day in the village of Tayama, another visitor was honored. Anita Singleton Prather, Aunt Pearlie Sue, director of the Gullah Kinfolk, was made a chief. The ceremony began with a libation.
For me, I'm just happy being Aunt Pearlie Sue. But you know, if it furthers the cause, if it brings some prosperity to Sierra Leone, prosperity to South Carolina, to Beaufort, to what we're doing, you know, I'm very humbled by it and very honored by it that people saw something in me deserved such a high honor. So I'm just grateful, grateful. Mm-hmm.
After they made her chief, everybody marched out and they started to celebrate. And they were moving around in that circle. And that's the same way they moved around when I was a little boy, going to my grandparents, my great-grandparents' church down in Lower Lexington County. After church, everybody would stand and they would go around in a circle. And it just brought tears to my eyes. The connection was just so strong.
You ain't ashamed to care for we African people.
Amen.
For many years, a circular dance called a ring shout was a part of Gullah Geechee Christian worship services. Performed from the days of enslavement into the mid-20th century, the ring shout has its roots in West African rituals, in which participants move in a counterclockwise circle, shuffling their feet, clapping, and singing in a call and response style. Enslaved people often worshiped this way in small structures called praise houses, where they could practice their unique form of Afro-Christianity away from the eyes and ears of their white enslavers.
They were out there doing the ring shout and they were going in different areas. And when we're telling our stories, we do the ring shout. So I was actually able to see that.
The Gullah Geechee people are unique. And among all African Americans, they have maintained the broadest and deepest set of African retentions within their culture. And so being able to go back to the wellspring for those cultural expressions is important for the people that carry them and keep them alive in this country.
Freetown was founded by formerly enslaved people, many of whom were Gullahs from South Carolina and Georgia. During the American Revolution, they escaped slavery, joined the British Army, and became known as Black Loyalists. Their first attempt to establish an African colony in 1787 failed. Another group of Black Loyalists settled in Nova Scotia, but there they faced harsh weather, broken promises, and racism. In 1792, more than 1,000 Black Loyalists left Nova Scotia for Sierra Leone, seeking a better life in Africa. They named their city Freetown, and they gathered and thanked God under a tall kapok or cotton tree.
When the Nova Scotian settlers landed, we believe this is the tree that they came to. We're not 100% sure, but seeing how tall it is, it probably stood out from a lot of the others. So this tree has become symbolic for Freetown, for Sierra Leone, for the freedom of enslaved Africans, and for us who came back. It's very central to Freetown spirit. So if you were somewhere else and you wanted somebody to meet you in Freetown, you can say, meet me by the cotton tree.
One of Freetown's most famous monuments is the original Forbay College building, the first Western-style university in sub-Saharan Africa.
The college was founded in 1827, and this building was actually built in 1846.
The first principal of Forbay College was a Gullah man from Charleston, South Carolina, Edward Jones. We have these kinds of evidence to show that indeed, from a small part of Africa, over a long period of time, many Africans were taken to a small part of America.
We're finding out that we still have unanswered questions, but there's something here that roots us, and the rice. We see it, we recognize it. Basket sewing, we see it, we recognize it. Certain words, expressions, una. I was like, wow, they're saying that all day long. You know, these are our people.
For over 100 years, this is where Africans came to study to above secondary level. I think it's akin to the Penn Center in Beaufort.
The Penn Center, formerly the Penn School, was founded on St. Helena Island, South Carolina in 1862 by Northern abolitionist missionaries. The school was created to educate freed people and was one of the first schools for blacks in the United States. Today, it is a community center and a museum of Gullah culture.
The connections are many, and I think now, coming to more modern times, we've had the recent twinning of Freetown and Charleston, which I think cements the bond between us.
The museum was officially opened by the first Chief Minister of Sierra Leone, who later on became the first Prime Minister, and that was Samuel Tumagai in 1961. The first gallery is here. It's a similarity as a result.
The woman who worked in the museum was talking about the old magic and how the warriors during the recent Civil War reached back to the old magic to fight, to become warriors, and how they believed in the magic that said they could become invisible and they could fly and they could be bulletproof and they could walk underwater. And chills ran up my neck because I've been telling stories about people who could fly for decades now. And that began to have even a deeper meaning to me, and I began to wonder about how we have carried these stories on and on and on in bits and pieces without even knowing where they started. Even telling some of the old stories, I find myself telling them differently, just since I've been back. My belief in the magic is real. More so than it had been.
Here today, I'm hosting as the mayor of Freetown, but also as a Creole. So I'm a descendant of freed slaves who made their way from Nova Scotia in 1792 and landed here in Freetown. So I always think of it in terms of this relationship as keeping the circle complete.
Just recently in 2019, we welcomed Freetown's mayor to Penn Center. During that time, they established a sister city between Freetown, Sierra Leone, and Charleston, South Carolina. They're linking many aspects, the museum, the International African American Museum, and just the city as a whole.
As part of that trip, I had the opportunity to speak at the Penn Center on St. Helena. So we are so connected. I've been the mayor for a year and 8 months now, having never been in public service or political life before. When you are looking at the challenges that a city faces, you can't do it in a silo. You actually find that everything connects with everything else.
Okay, so
we have a sector target, which is job creation with a tourism focus. And that's why for us, today, and this visit on it as a whole is so significant.
The ones from South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Caribbean, we all now one.
We have a really rich history, a history which ties in with the history of the Gullah Geechee people. There was a movement, an involuntary movement, which took our people from these shores to the West, to the Caribbean, to the Americas, to the UK. And then with time, a certain number of settlers came back, but many, many more stayed. But we're all connected, so it's so exciting to have the Gullah Geechee here. Maybe the best thing about what's going on now is that the dots are finally connecting.
Sierra Leoneans have been hearing about the Gullah Geechee for decades. At a hotel near the beach in Freetown, they finally got to see their Gullah Geechee visitors perform.
Hello, family. Say we are family. Have all my brothers in me and sisters. Here we stand. Tried to bend us, tried to break us. In the cotton fields, they tried to break us, but we stood here. The rice fields with the alligators and the water moccasins. And we're still here. We're still here. Need I say any more? And I'm going to leave it at that. Praise the Lord.
Now, there's a few ways to spot a hat. But the number one way is if you know somebody in your neighborhood who always got some kind of money, but you ain't never see go to work, they a hag. Now, hags are known for shedding their skin at night, tormenting people in their sleep.
Debunking a lot of myths that we hold in America about what it means to be African, what it means to go back to Africa. It's put a whole new perspective on my life, and it's put a whole new grind under me, I feel like.
Now, before I go on, I gotta tell you.
It gave a new clarity and purpose for me as a writer, actor, storyteller.
Way number one.
The type of stories I want to tell, the way I want to tell them, the impact that I want to have. I don't even know if I can put it into words. We were sitting on Bunce Island, and it was almost like I could hear the ancestors saying, what you're doing is what we need to happen.
That is the story of the bull hag. Thank you.
For each other, for the morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each other, for the morning star rises.
Being in West Africa, it just pointed to the non-linearity of time, the fiction of this straight line, and that yes, we come from these human beings, these magical, amazing, incredible human beings who lived and loved and worked and died and lived and lived and lived until I'm here.
I want to tell you the story of Bina. He be the one that 9 years old that been kicked out of yard. They said that day Bina been following his mama around foot to foot. Everywhere his mama been go, Bina been on him.
Bina was captured and taken to Bunce Island and shipped off to the Americas. And because of that event, we are here. My grandmother has told me that story several times, but it was amazing seeing her tell that story to everyone else on this trip.
So he said, Bina, go out there in the yard and be by yourself. So Bina go out in the yard and even play around, and then Bina look up and he see a red cloth. As soon as Bina been reach up his hand, somebody grab him and put something on top of his head, people choose stories that they want to tell, and we have a lot of wonderful stories that are being told about Africa and those who came out. But I think that story, the reason I'm so emotional with it is that arm of the ancestry is glad to be on the table, to be heard. And they ride 8 times. The moon come up and go down. And then they get to this place, and that man that had on that long coat and that long thing been hanging down from his mouth, tell him, say, get down. This your home now. To take it back to Africa and tell it on African soil was beyond my wildest expectations. So I left her there and probably won't tell that story much anymore because it's so hard to tell. It's just a difficult story.
Oh, no more lashing. Amen. No more lashing. Amen. No more lashing. When we see Jesus, trouble will be over. Yeah, trouble will be over. Amen. Yeah, trouble will be over. Amen. Yeah, trouble will be over. When we see Jesus, trouble will be over. Amen.
We're finding that connection. Every little bit and piece of our history that we did happen to hold on to, of our culture, you know, that we did happen to keep, and whether we knew it or not, now we're finding out. Now this light is being shed on it. You know, this is a jewel. You know, it's sacred.
Until we come this far, may find no fault, may feel like
Sierra Leoneans still don't know about this connection. Growing up, I knew nothing. I had to be in America in my 30s to learn that we have this relationship with people from South Carolina and or Georgia. I don't want that to be lost from Sierra Leoneans. We need to know this story also. Sierra Leoneans.
We want to welcome you from the Ministry of Tourism and Cultural Affairs. This is a very important and historic event. The history of the transatlantic slave trade cannot be told from an historically balanced sheet without the mentioning of Sierra Leone, which is also Bones Island, where our ancestors were taken, but now our consciousness are being revived, and now we are coming back in this new age. So we say this year, for the Gullah people to come here, other African Americans, is a renaissance for the African rising and the African diaspora.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Sierra Leone's Minister of Tourism and Cultural Affairs.
Yes. Shall we dance together? Let me take this opportunity of welcoming you on behalf of the President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, the ministers, the government and people of Sierra Leone. I know you have come to link up with your ancestral roots, because today in the world we are talking about Year of Return. We are talking about how do we celebrate, how do we link up, how do we ensure that African Americans come back to their roots, link with their heritage.
We're hoping that this tour will be a catalyst for more and more African Americans to visit Africa. I think it's an important thing for Africans in America and in the diaspora to reconnect back to the continent and we believe the world would be a better place.
Let me wish you well. Say hi to all the relatives that did not come. Tell them the next trip they have to be here. And that it is the best for all of us. Thank you very much. God bless you. Wishing you safe to back home.
Without these young and wonderful students, and some of them graduates, this would have been impossible. Every village that we've been to, all the welcoming you've been getting from all those villages, they help us do that pre-arrangement. Sometimes riding on motorbikes. And guess what? They are all volunteers. Yes, that's how amazing they are, right? So, we thank them and we want to continue to thank them.
Next generation in the house.
Next generation in the house.
Being with the young people in Sierra Leone has been admirable and inspiring. Just their hunger for a better reality. You know, you listen to the things that they've been through. It's crazy to me that the Civil War literally ended 9 years ago here. So they're used to seeing like their friends and their partners just murdered in the most gruesome way. You know, we talk about like gang violence back home, but they talk about real war here.
The young people who helped to host us over there, their willingness to work and to volunteer, to do whatever they could to make us feel at home and make us feel safe, and their enthusiasm to want to know about the Gullah Connection and how we're connected to them. They're going to be the first graduating class with a major in tourism and hospitality from their colleges.
We are optimistic because we know that they are coming to Sierra Leone to create a better future for us. That we the tourism students, that we are practicing in the tourism sector, that they will do something for us, they will create job for us, they will come and invest in our country. So I am optimistic.
Hopefully we'll be able to get them over here between the University of South Carolina, the Gullah Festival, giving them a formal invitation to come over, and hopefully their Minister of Tourism and the Mayor of Freetown, and start getting the ball rolling.
We are starving. We are starving. I go for the whole of the day. I always get 10,000, sometimes 15,000. I have to pay transport, come home. You can't able to save nothing. The future is bleak.
Some people actually are not fortunate to get to where we are now because we are in university. So many people don't have that opportunity. And for us that have been fortunate to reach at this level, after having got our certificate, it's also become difficult for us to get a job.
You can look for a job. You can create one. Look for something, you innovate and you create something. So for me, after graduation, I plan to establish my own business.
We want you guys to come back home and help rebuild this country, because without you, we can't able to achieve this goal. That's why we are making you ambassadors now to go and preach the message home.
The ability to come back and reconnect with people of our age, this is something that's going to live on for generations. And it's crazy to see the difference of privilege. The things that we take for granted are things that they fight for every day.
The students that we encountered, I think that we've got to work very hard at trying to get them here, because they can truly tell the story about how it is being an African, being in Sierra Leone, and relating it to the Gullahs.
It's so clear now what my mission is and what I have to do. I have to do it for my grandchildren, for my great-grandchildren. I have to do it for all these young people that I see on the streets that have given up and that don't seem to have any hope because they don't know where they come from or where they're going. And I can tell them, I know where we come from now. And you come from greatness. It's not that you're going to be great, you already are. It's already in you.
Back home in the South Carolina Low Country, many young Gullah Geechee people face the same difficulties as their peers in Sierra Leone.
When I see young people doing things, whether they're selling drugs or whatever, and I'm saying, you got the salesman's set of skills, let me give you a product that will bring you pride and economic development and help to maintain and retain our culture. Heritage tourism is one of the fastest growing areas. And when we think about heritage tourism for the state of South Carolina, Gullah Geechee is right up there at front. So we have to re-educate our people to know that your culture is important. Don't get angry, because we know we don't have any hotels. We don't have a whole lot of restaurants. You know, we don't own the Walmarts, we don't own the filling stations, because all of those things, when tourists come into this area, bring tourist dollars. So now we have to sit back, okay, so what is it that I can do? So if we start teaching these kids, taking them on tours in their own backyard, teaching them these historic sites so that they can become tour guides, and they can make $200 an hour. Because you got tour buses that bring in 40 people, the average tour is $40. So that's $1,600. So if we start teaching these young people how to become tour guides, and I talk to the tour operator, okay, instead of paying $1,600, hire one of my young people.
Awareness of the potential for Gullah Geechee heritage tourism was sparked by the first homecoming to Sierra Leone in 1989, documented in the film Family Across the Sea.
My brother and my sister them.
After Sierra Leonean President Joseph Momo's visit to Penn Center, Joe Opala worked with Emery Campbell to organize a homecoming.
The president was so impressed by the similarities between the Gullah language and the Creole language, similarities in the rice diet. All of this impressed him greatly. And President Momo invited Emery Campbell, then the director of Penn Center, to organize a homecoming of Gullah people to Sierra Leone.
Joe Opala came in and did a lecture to the former Penn School graduates. And boy, after that lecture, those old Penn School graduates who had never embraced Gullah, they got up and they were so proud of after they heard that history. Joe Opala and others decided that, you know, you should take a trip to West Africa. And those similarities you could compare to what you know and what you have experienced. And so we did.
Past wrongs. But
and when we got to Sierra Leone, we had such a big welcome. Oh gosh, we were treated like royalty. And when we came back, everybody was excited about our trip, and the interest just grew like wildfire. So we decided, we should go to Congress and ask Congressman Clyburn if we could put a center at Penn Center on Gullah culture. Mr. Clyburn said, we ain't gonna bother with a center at Penn Center. We're gonna do a study to see where Gullah really exists. And that research study said, yeah, these people are Gullah people. It does have a footprint all along this coast, and we should do a Gullah Geechee corridor to preserve it.
In many ways, that trip that was taken 30 years ago was a catalyst to all the things that we celebrate today. You know, whether there's a historic marker on Sullivan's Island talking about the arrival of Africans, or whether there's a sweetgrass basket marker in Mount Pleasant, or the work that still continues at the Penn Center, or the fact that we're living and standing today in the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor. I think 30 years ago, that trip really was a birth of it.
In 2006, Congress established the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor as a platform for sharing the history and culture of the Gullah Geechee. Extending from just north of Wilmington, North Carolina, to near St. Augustine, Florida, and 30 miles inland, it is the only national heritage area that has a group of people as its subject, confirming the national significance of the Gullah Geechee.
Veronica is a former commissioner, Emery Campbell, former commissioner. There are a lot of people of that generation who were instrumental in creating the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor because they wanted to ensure that future generations would have the ability to draw on that knowledge, to have all of this history preserved and documented, because they knew how powerful it is and how important it's going to be to generations to come to be able to reclaim that, touch that, and incorporate that into their own idea of who they are in this country.
In October 2019, ground was broken in Charleston for the International African American Museum. Among the honored guests was Freetown's mayor, Yvonne Aki Sawyer. The museum is being built on the Charleston waterfront.
This is the spot where almost half of all the enslaved Africans who came to the United States over the course of the entire transatlantic slave trade, this is where they landed. There is this amazing connection between Charleston and Sierra Leone, between Charleston and between Freetown. We had an opportunity to create a sister cities relationship between Charleston and Freetown. And so that's really activating these bonds. It's so important to go there to reconnect with our ancestry. It gives one a sense that their place in this world is far beyond what we've been told.
I think anybody that goes to Africa becomes transformed. It's a spiritual place, definitely an example of where civilization started.